It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That Alive Dead hour opener, Ant, that is definitely me today. I am on the full-on struggle bus today.
Me too, man. It's Tuesday, man. It got you.
It got me bad. I mean, we did take command this morning. Like, that was great. But then, I don't know, man. Like, I was telling Rachel right before we left, I was like, right before I left, and I was later, way later today than I normally am.
Mm-hmm.
I got here about 3:20. I was at home working. It wasn't like I was putzing around. Like,
yeah.
We taped with Lynnell earlier for Overreaction Tuesday. That's really good. It's coming up at 5:30. So I was doing a lot of editing on that. I had to go to the dentist today. So like I had a bunch of stuff that I was doing, and I just looked at her about 2:45 and went, if I could work from home today, I would go take a nap right now, and then I'd wake up 10 minutes before the show, and I'd do the show. Or if I was at work, I would go in the back studio and hide, and I would close my eyes for 20 minutes because I will do that.
Yes, you will.
It is a known entity that your boy will take a pre-show nap if needed. And today's a day where I feel like I needed it, and we didn't get it. So we're going to rely on you out there at 301-230-0980 to help us out with the show a little bit with a segment that we call Vibe Check Tuesday, where you call in and you tell us what you think about the Commanders, and we can talk about the offense. We can talk about the defense. We can talk about Sam Howell. We can talk about Ron Rivera. It's all on the table. This is the one time a week that we really just straight up open up the phones and go wherever you guys want to with the state of the team. And I'm excited to do that. I am ready to do that pretty much whenever. We also do typically start a Vibe Check Tuesday because I talk a lot first and 10 and all this kind of stuff on Monday, getting Anthony's pulse on things. So let's start there, Anthony. It's Tuesday. We have this very silly team that we talk about every day. We could do a Wizards Vibe Check today, and that would probably be even uglier. God, their loss last night. We'll talk about it in the 6 o'clock hour. But where are you with the positivity, the negativity, etc., when it comes to the old Mandos?
To be honest, I think I'm where, everybody else was in terms of us looking at the loss in the lens of, Sam Howell's development. Again, this was his third straight game where he went out there and had a pretty good performance, and this time we just, ended up coming up short. But I think it just goes back to us not being able to finish these games. Is more so what you were getting at yesterday with the defense, and us, still constantly, giving up the big play. So with the offense, the Achilles heel for the offense in the first half of the season was the sacks taken. We do away with those over the last couple of weeks, but the defense, they just can't seem to get right when it comes to, these big plays that we're giving up. And I think if we continue to do that, I don't know what percent of chance we'll have, to be able to win games. But again, I'm happy, where Sam is right now. Again, I still want to see a lot more. People, still calling him a franchise QB. I want to see more. We've seen QBs have good seasons and then, plummet from there. So, Sam, he just has to keep going out there and, putting work on tape for real.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he is showing you a massive amount of growth. What is absolutely bananas crazy from this game, as I was doing, the research this morning for Take Command, and then ultimately that carries over to this show. I would do the research for this show first, but we do the show second, so that's how that works. You know how many pressures the Seahawks got on, and I'm using PFF's number here. You know how many pressures they got on Sam Howell on Sunday?
Maybe 8.
No.
Am I far off?
Yes.
Okay.
Like
28.
Now you're close.
Dang.
But you're still under. It's 30.
30?
The Seahawks, according to PFF's metric, pressured Sam on 30 plays. Or at least there were 30 pressures. I wonder how their math works out if 2 guys get pressure on the same play. So I don't know that it's exactly like 30 individual pressures.
Yeah.
But the total number of pressures accumulated by the defensive players on the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday was 30. And he only took sacks 3 times. And in fact, I would say it's definitely not 30 total plays. So of the whatever number of dropbacks he had, it wasn't like it was 30, because that would be easy math. 3 sacks on 30 pressures is 10%, and his sack to pressure ratio was 13.9. So maybe it's like 27, 25, somewhere in there. And a couple of times it's multiple guys coming. But yeah, I mean, we're still talking about the same amount of pressure given up by this O-line / whatever other factors go into that. Receivers not being open, Sam holding the ball longer. It still counts as a pressure if he holds the ball for 5 seconds. And I'm not saying he was doing that necessarily in this game, but I think the offense as a whole has grown with that in that area where he has figured out how to move in the pocket a little bit. He's figured out how to get the ball out of his hands faster. And those were the 2 biggest things. They actually did a little bit better in the quick game than it felt like. Unfortunately, they never really could get anything off of it. So you get like one quick 5-7 yard gain, whatever, and then there goes the drive. And you couldn't actually get a first down. But they're doing a better job at certain stuff, and I think that's obviously very exciting. But then defensively, like, I don't know. It's a weird game too, because they only give up 19 through 3 quarters, and really through like 3.5 quarters. And the defense just eventually broke. Like, it's bend but don't break, but they broke. And like, if you can hold Seattle to a field goal at the end of that game, instead of the Tyler Lockett touchdown on St. Juste, in which St. Juste is actually in pretty good position. It's a heck of a throw, like front pylon, gets it low and outside. BSJ has his arm in there, and the ball just goes right past it, and Lockett catches it. If that's a field goal, it's 22-19 when Sam gets the ball back. Let's say he goes down and does the same exact thing. Now all of a sudden it's 26-22. And Seattle's got to drive for a touchdown at the end, and maybe you win that game 26-22. But they broke at the end. And that's in part because they were exhausted, because they let up a ton of drives during the game and spent a ton of time on the field. And that was magnified by the fact that the offense was not doing anything for the first 3 quarters, basically. Like, the only thing that they do early on offense is the off-schedule stuff that Sam creates to B-Rob. Like, there's nothing that was planned that really went well. And, in watching the tape back, you see them trying to hit a bunch of cover 3 beaters. Like, they tried this wheel route with the running backs and the tight ends. With I think they might have even ran it with a receiver out of a stack a couple times. But, like, they were trying to hit this wheel route up the sideline, and the Seahawks just like, we know what's coming. Teams have been trying to do this to us for a decade. We know that a wheel is a cover 3 beater. We know how to cover it. Thanks for playing. And EB didn't have a counterpunch until the end, when Sam just went ballistic on that last drive, which is great. Love that. You love creating off schedule the stuff to B-Rob. Like, it still counts. But when you look at sustainability in your offense, it's like, wow, they stunk for 3 quarters. And it was really bad in the second quarter, where they went 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So, long story short, like, it's a weird game to talk about, to break down, because for the first 3 quarters, the better unit was actually the defense, because they bent but they didn't break. The offense got lucky / made plays. But I think that also proves a larger point about the NFL, which is eventually you just got to make plays. Like, football players got to make football plays. And if you can do that, you can overcome bad process. It's not the best plan in the world, but it is why talent matters. And the Commanders' defense, while they may have found ways to give up a bunch of first downs and then hold and ultimately not let up touchdowns until that final drive or until the final quarter, it's not good enough when you don't make any plays the entire game. So with that preamble and kind of where Anthony sits, where I sit today, let's take some calls. 301-230-0980. It's the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. Your calls on a Vibe Check Tuesday are next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app on this Vibe Check Tuesday. Seth Walder from ESPN is going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. Seth is one of their directors of analytics. So what do analytics really look like in the NFL, and what can Commanders fans expect from Eugene Shen's addition to the franchise? We will discuss with Seth coming up at the top of the hour. Right now, though, your calls, 301-230-0980. It is a Vibe Check Tuesday, so how are you feeling about the old Mandos? Let's go to the Ace Law listener line. Of course, don't forget that if you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Let's go to our guy, Lap. Lap, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? What's up, Craig? Hey, man, it's disheartening, man. When you got, because I really don't care about baseball. I really don't care about hockey like that. And the two sports that I really like is basketball and football. And it's just sad that we go through these rebuilding stages every few years with these teams, man. We can't contend. We can't, we don't know when we're going to contend. We don't draft well on both teams. We can't either seem to develop talent that we do have. It's always coaching. There's always penalties. There's just always some issues. So we never know when that time is going to come. You want to blame, ownerships. Feel like we curse. I don't know, but I don't know how, Ron didn't see the importance of that game when we haven't done well in the conference. We haven't done well in the division.
What makes you think he says that he didn't see the importance of the game?
Because he said the same thing over and over, Craig. Whenever the fans call in to you to talk about change, like you and Rooster seem like y'all want to stick with what we have, and it's not
What show are you listening to, bro?
Well, based on the comments you just said.
What comment?
About Ron not, taking the seriousness of winning the game. He's saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, he's a dead man walking. That's not me endorsing the things he's saying. It's like, what is he supposed to say? Why do you feel like? How do you take what he's saying and make it? Hold on. Let me talk for a second. Let me ask you. You still haven't answered the question, so I'm gonna re-ask in a different way. What is it that he's saying that makes you think he doesn't care about winning the game? Caring about it is different than being able to do it. But why do you think he doesn't care about winning?
I'll answer it for you, Craig. If he's saying that he wants to, we'll figure it out. Like his famous line, or he's confused or lost, or he doesn't know what's going on. Or even last year when he didn't know if we lost that game, that it wasn't going to take us to the postseason, or we didn't have a chance for the postseason. So
sure.
It's dumb stuff like that. That's what I'm talking about.
Right, but I don't think that's not because he doesn't care. I think it's because he's bad at the job. Like, you can care and be bad at something. You could ask me to be a professional singer, and I would stink at it
for a while. So
yeah.
So what do you suggest that we do, Craig? Because whenever we say something, you always. I don't know. I don't know.
You wait till the end of the season and you blow him out and you hire someone else next year. But it doesn't. Firing him right now is not going to save the season. They're already screwed.
Well, let me ask you this, Craig. The reason why I say that is because of what do you think we should do? Because you get rid of Chase, you get rid of Sweat, right? You still have Terry, you still have Jonathan and Payne, guys that you have paid. We still have a combination of veteran and young players.
Right.
So we know that Sam can play the game.
Yes.
Everybody's question is he the franchise quarterback? That's neither here nor there. You'll find out when that time comes. But you can't tell me that you can't make the playoffs without Sam and the talent that we have on this team. You can't say that that's not possible when we've been in the playoff contention the last 2 years. Even now, we're still mathematically not out.
Lap, do you know where this defense ranks? Like,
probably dead last, probably.
yes, correct. That is absolutely 100% the correct answer. The total defense ranking that the NFL uses is total yardage. They are dead last in total yardage. They are second to last in points against. If you want a fancier stat, if you will, they are 30th out of 32 in DVOA. Like, they can't make the playoffs because their defense is terrible. And unfortunately, you can't fix that in season. Can they compete with the talent they have week in and week out? Yes. Are they ultimately going to fall short in the ways that they have because they're not good when it comes to details and execution, specifically when pressure is highest? Yes. They also happen to have a hellacious schedule down the stretch. They've got teams like Miami coming up. If Rodgers is back in New York, like all of a sudden that game looks way different. Like could they? Yes, but they're also behind the eight ball.
Well, that's my point. I mean, like, so when are we going to get to that point where we don't just make the playoffs because teams are sorry that year, or, you know, we go on a crazy
moving
winning
forward
streak? When are we going to moving forward, when are we going to get
I think they could do it next year. Like, I genuinely think that they could do it next year. Lap, I'm gonna let you run. We got a couple more calls I would like to get to. Appreciate your call as always.
All right, Craig. Good call, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for the call, and I will continue to talk about this because I think it's interesting. More of your calls though. 301-230-0980. The A-Shaw listener line. 301-230-0980. Like, again, this season is not a reflection of Josh Harris and what he will be as owner remotely. He got the team the night before the season started. Almost no one that works for the team now was hired while he was the owner. Nevertheless, like, is a direct result of decisions that Josh made, other than keeping the people that were already there. And you had to, because, like, you can't delay training camp and go hire a staff. And there's no one, and I mean literally no one in the NFL that would leave a coordinator job for a head coaching job the night before the season that is worth hiring for that job. Because some of these things get instilled in the offseason. Like, you install an offense in the offseason. This is the problem with the Commanders' running game. They don't practice it. And you can't go install a bunch of run plays because then you ignore the other stuff and it would take too much time. So you're kind of stuck with what you have and they don't practice it. And so it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think it's stupid. It's NFL brain at its worst. But, like, that's a mistake that got made in March, in April, in May, in June. It got made in August when they didn't do this stuff in training camp, and it is coming home to roost. Like, consequences, handshake, actions. They made decisions about certain things, and the results are they're not good at football in a lot of situations, or they're not good at certain parts of the game. They decided that they were going to move forward with Emmanuel Forbes and take the risk that he would be able to figure out how to play quicker than everyone else in the league seemed to think that he would, based off of what, kind of the consensus draft stock that he had. And maybe he'll be turned into an awesome player. But, like, they needed him to be good right now because Benjamin St-Juste, they needed not to be their number one corner. They decided not to address that. They decided to, go the Cody Barton route at middle linebacker. They decided to say, like, hey, we think we can piece this O-line together. Instead of saying, like, you know what? We have this young quarterback that we think could be pretty good. What if we gave him a great O-line and invested money there? They decided to not trade, which I totally understood at the time. And this isn't a criticism. It's just describing, like, this is not me second-guessing them. It's just saying, like, hey, you made a decision. These are the consequences. If they had decided to trade a Montez Sweat in the offseason, maybe they could have gotten another draft pick and done this last year and taken an O-lineman, or gotten whatever they wanted to do, right? They use the cap space to sign someone. But they didn't do those things. Those are off-season decisions that have come home to roost. The results are what they are. That's not an endorsement of them. They stink. Like, defensively, they're abysmal. But the problem is those are off-season decisions that have in-season consequences that you can't really fix in season, because you can't go hire the linebackers coach from San Francisco, or I don't even know who that is. I'm picking up a name, a place, and be like, hey, do you want to come be our defensive coordinator? He's like, no, I'm in the middle of my season with the Niners. So firing these guys now, when you don't have answers to replace them, it'd be one thing if, like, the coordinator was a huge, like, in Vegas, right? Josh McDaniels was a poison level problem with them. everyone hated him. That's not the case here. So until you get to that, you do not need to clean house. Now, if you lose embarrassingly to New York this week, like if you lose to New York this weekend, Ron is probably lucky that you get Dallas on Thanksgiving, because you're not firing Rivera with a 4-day turnaround. Or maybe you do, but you're probably not, right? But if you were to lose to New York, and then especially if you get blown out by Dallas on Thanksgiving and you have that long break, then I think that could be happening. Or maybe maybe they do move on from Jack and try someone else, or Rivera takes on more, whatever, this, that. Like, the problem is they have built a very flimsy system of coaches here. They don't have a strong staff, and that shows in the results of the players, but also shows that there's not an obvious line of succession that would be there. And Eric Bieniemy's got his hands full on offense, and he's not exactly killing it there. Like, it's better than it has been, but he's definitely having a learning curve. And do you really want to put the defense on him as you trust him to keep Sam Howell moving in the right direction? I would say no. So as much as it sucks for this year, one, making the moves that some people want is not actually going to help push you forward this year to anything meaningful. And two, it would probably hurt the more important thing long-term if we accept the fact that the season is all but over from making the playoffs, which is Sam's development, by putting more on EB's plate and taking him away from that very thing. So and trust me, I hate this. This sucks. I care about this team and I care about the Wizards. I think if people listen to my show, they know that. It's not anything personal to the Caps or the Nats. I'm just not a big baseball guy, and I'm not a big hockey guy. Certainly, my job is to serve you, the listener, and if the Nats are super interesting, like we have Nats guests on and we talk about it. Or if the Caps are super interesting on something, we always get perspective from Steve Wino and other folks. Joe Beninati comes on. I love talking about it with them because that's their area of expertise. The thing that I know really well, and the things that I've poured my career in DC talking into these microphones into, are the Wizards and the Commanders. And those teams are in a very not fun place right now because they are at the start of a rebuild. I will say for both, though, I have very high hopes. The Wizards are so far in the beginning, it's hard to see the end, but I trust the people doing it. And for the Commanders, I think if they could get a really good coach that is quarterback friendly, a la a Ben Johnson from Detroit is my current leader in the clubhouse, along with some serious investment in key places, which should happen under a new general manager, and they have the resources, draft capital, and free agency money to do so, they could be competitive next year. That's sweet. But the next 7 weeks are probably going to be pretty frustrating. And it's just a reality that I'm willing to say out loud. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday, and the vibes, boy, are they immaculate. We will take more of your calls next. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday, so we're taking your calls at 301-230-0980 on the Ace Law listener line. Offense, defense, Rivera, Howell, whatever it is you want on that Ace Law listener line. And again, if you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. Let's go to Mo. Mo, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show on this Vibe Check Tuesday.
Hey, listen. I've been saying this now going on 2 years. Ron Rivera cannot build an offensive line. He couldn't in North Carolina when he was in Carolina, okay? And he hasn't been able to show that he could. The only reason he was successful in Carolina is for one thing. He had a quarterback, all right, like Cam Newton, that was able to create that dual running game with the two running backs. Other than that,
so
I mean,
let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Mo. Who was blocking for Cam and those running backs?
Exactly.
No. That doesn't actually make your point. Like, that's the hilarious part. In Carolina, in Carolina, the offensive line was like not that big of an issue for a long part of that tenure. Like, in fact, part of the problem is he brought some of those same guys here, and it's not 2015 anymore. He tried to do it in 2022, and Norwell and Turner were not good.
Right. The game has passed him. The game has literally. Listen, I've sat here and watched him completely just completely bash 2 games without throwing the flag for some crazy reason. It just doesn't make sense how his whole sideline is jumping up and down, saying to throw the flag, that he didn't catch the ball, and it's like he's asleep. He can't see that the team is running up there just to get the snap off.
Yeah, I mean,
call timeout, man. You'll get the timeout back. If you win the
yes, you win the
challenge. Win the call.
Okay, all right. I think that's good for Mo. Like, I think there's a few things that drive me nuts more, Anthony, when a caller like makes a point I agree with, but makes it so terribly that I have to be like, well, no, that's actually not. Well, like Trey Turner made Pro Bowls in Carolina. Ryan Khalil was their center there. He might go to the Hall of Fame. Here, the offensive lines have been spectacularly mediocre to poor, but they've had other issues. And, like, again, this year, just because people keep saying it doesn't make it any more or less true. This year's offensive line is a fairly average NFL offensive line that has had a few bad performances, and they gave up a decent amount of pressure this weekend. But some of that, like, volume of pressures, right, is due to the fact that their offensive coordinator throws the football more than anyone else in the whole league. Anthony, should I read the stat? The one that I found before the show?
Yes.
This stat is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy is this stat for you?
Maybe like a 7, 8.
Oh, it's like a 9 for me. Actually, I sent it to Logan, and he responded with, really? Or no, for real? With 5 question mark / exclamation points.
Wow.
Logan is not an emotive texter.
I was about to say, yeah, that's
like
a lot
if
of
you
excitement out of him.
Yeah, that's like the equivalent of you doing 78 and me doing 142.
Wow.
Yeah. Sam Howell is the NFL's leader in passing yards, right? He has thrown for more yards than anyone else in the NFL. He also has more attempts than anyone else in the NFL. The Washington Commanders, as a team, are 11th in the NFL in passing yards. Now you're going, wait a second. Is there another quarterback? Like, did Mahomes miss a game? And, you know, did the other 10? No. Here's the difference in Sam Howell's individual passing yards and the team passing yards number. On the team number, they subtract sack yardage. And so once you add in Sam's individual number is when he throws the ball and a receiver catches it, what's the yardage? Add it up. Take that number, subtract the number of yards he's lost due to sacks, and that is the team number. And you go from 1st to 11th. Now, if you want to talk about efficiency, which I feel like is a word we use a lot and probably don't define enough, right? But this is a good example. What it means to be efficient offensively will become apparent as I explain this. Efficiency, net yards per pass attempt. So every time they attempt to pass, roughly how many yards does it go on average? So an incompletion is a 0 on that. A sack is obviously going to, well, I guess a sack is technically not even a pass attempt. So you're now talking about completion percentage and you're talking about volume. You drop from 1st in total yardage, cumulative, gross numbers, to 23rd in net yards per pass attempt. So this is not me saying that Sam actually stinks. Sam has been fantastic the last 3 weeks. And Sam went from a guy that we were asking the question, is he starting to hold this offense back, to, is he the only reason this offense is going forward? That's how well he's played the last 3 weeks, and specifically Sunday in Seattle. That's how genuinely poor the rest of it was. But some of that is systemic. Some of that is Eric Bieniemy's utter refusal to run the football. And so when you say, oh, they gave up 25 pressures or whatever it was. Yeah, because they dropped him back 158 times. Like, some of this is just pretty simple math. And so I get exasperated with watching this team and some of the commentary around it, because we just refuse to acknowledge a simple reality, which is I don't think that this offensively Sunday, they were set up very well for success. And I just think philosophically, I don't think they're set up very well for success right now, because, well, you do not need to go 60-40. Could you get to 65-35? Could you not be the most pass-happy team in the league? Because if you look at the teams who are actually efficient offensively, you're going to find teams like the Lions, the Niners, the Dolphins, who run it well. And they don't run it a ton. They don't have to run it a ton. They can. If they get up on you in a game, they'll just keep running it. But like, Jared Goff threw the ball a lot on Sunday against the Chargers. And they won the football game. And they did it because they know how to stay balanced and they can be threatening you all over the place. And it just makes it a lot easier. And that's also why I want Ben Johnson to be the head coach here.
So are you in favor, I guess, of a more balanced attack, or would you be content with our pass-happy approach that we see?
More is a relative term. More balanced, yes. It doesn't need to be much. Like, shift it 3 to 5%. And we're really talking about earlier in games when the score, I'm talking game flow agnostic situations, right? Like when Warren Sharp does all of his stats, he does 1st and 2nd down in the first half. Why? Because it's the most predictable of what an offense actually wants to be. Because once you get into the second half, like, your game flow starts to really impact it, and 3rd down is its own beast. But if you look at what a team does on 1st and 2nd down in the first half, oh my God, the numbers are so terrible for Washington in terms of the run pass skew. They are so heavy pass. And when you have, and you can do that if Mahomes is your quarterback. Howell's real good and has been real good the last couple of weeks. But you can't put that burden on him. And you can't put that burden on this O-line. Like, that's the other part of it, is like, you want to give up a bunch of sacks, or you want to give up even a bunch of pressures? Do that. That's the thing that, kills me, because it seems so obvious to me. And yet, here we are. More of your phone calls next. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. A Vibe Check Tuesday continues before Seth Walder joins us from ESPN's analytics department at the top of the hour. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Joined at the top of the hour by ESPN's Seth Walder. He is one of their analytics gurus, and he is going to tell us more about what analytics actually look like in the NFL. How are they used? What are some maybe more specific things in terms of, like, give me an example of a formula that a team can come up with that can help them win a game. That also can maybe help them in the scouting process. What are some things that teams are trying to do that are ahead of the curve? And he's also very familiar with the work of Eugene Shen, who was the new senior vice president of football strategy at the Commanders and has been a long-time leader in the field of football analytics. So Seth will be able to tell us about all of those things coming up at the top of the hour. Overreaction Tuesday with Lynnell coming up at 5:30, but we continue now with our Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Team 980 on the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Jeff. Jeff, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, you really have struck a nerve with me. I'm 58 years old, and I've been watching, forever. I would love to be one of these sports journalists in the post-game interview and just have a coach's ear for a minute and be like, oh, I'm Jeff from the Washington Post. Can you tell me what the philosophy was, why there's this brainwashing and sexiness to this pass-happy RPO kind of look, when in reality, when you flip the field, when you judge down and distance, when you judge game time that's left, when you judge the game clock, whether you get a first down or score, if you were to hold on to the ball and not put turnovers at risk because you're throwing so much, maybe you'd wash 4 or run 3, 4, 5 minutes off the clock when you have a 13-point lead and not throw an interception that puts the team back in it. If you were to just, like you say, have more balance. Why is it such, let's step on the gas instead of let's do some math and figure out that we could probably do this, flip the field? It's ridiculous.
So the thing is, like, the math, this is why actually I want to have Seth on, right? Is because the math in a vacuum tells you that passing the ball is more effective. Part of the problem when you look at, like, EPA, which judges how effective plays are, the EPA is much higher on pass plays than run plays. And part of the reason that run plays get drugged down in EPA is because of the frequency of holding penalties. And so it's easy to say, like, oh, bad stuff doesn't happen when you run the football. Actually, it does with more regularity than in the pass game. Holding is more common on run plays than on pass plays. And you can fumble the ball as well.
Right. But not to cut you off, but would you say those run plays are breakdowns when they're not real run plays? They are off-script scrambles that I bet it would be interesting to know what they mean by. They can separate though. Like that research has been done. I'm talking real, like, handoffs, toss plays, all those kinds of things, right? Okay.
But what I think gets lost in those numbers, and the one place I push back on, like, and this is why I think analytics are dangerous, because they're actually, like, it's just a number, right? It's how you interpret it matters. And so, yes, that is true. You passed a score in this league, and I actually firmly believe that. But you have to run enough to maintain the schematic advantages that have been the case for decades, that if there is a threat to run the football, then defenses will play you a certain way, which opens up more space, which allows those numbers to be true for you, that passing is more effective. And my gripe with the way EB calls games, and has this entire season, is that I think he is under that threshold. And part of the reason they haven't generated a lot of big plays is because teams don't even consider the fact that they are going to run the football. And so there's a time of possession trickle-down element to the defense that I think you're talking about as well, in terms of time of possession and just letting, like, on a 0-yard run, the clock runs. On an incompletion, they're both 0 yards, the clock stops.
If you ran it into the line 3 times, how many minutes is that? I mean, if you got one first down on a drive, what is it, 4 minutes off the clock?
Not quite, because it's a 40-second play clock. At times it's 25. And Jeff, I'm gonna let you go because we got 2 more calls that I want to try to get in real quick. Actually, I lied. I see the prompt on one of them, and we're only gonna do one of these 2 calls. But, like, the point is, you have to have the threat. because otherwise defenses start to junk it up and they play junk coverages and they can blitz and pass rushers get into a rhythm. And like, you make everything worse by not being balanced. You just have to be two-dimensional to play your best in this league. And even in Kansas City, there was a threat of the run with the jet sweeps and some of the things that they did that kept defenses honest. And they were also so terrified of like Tyreek Hill for a lot of those years and some of the deep stuff that they started to like really play back. And Mahomes has a ton of space to work with underneath. And that's one of the things that I think they're struggling with this year is defenses are starting to readapt without Tyreek and without any outside threat. And Kansas City, in some of their games where they've played better offensively, has actually leaned on Isaiah Pacheco a little bit. And so can you establish the balance that you don't have to run it a lot? You have to make the other team believe that you will at any time. And that, to me, is the difference. All right, real quick, let's go to Noel or Noel. Noel, I want to make sure I get your name pronunciation right.
It's Noel. It's
Noel.
Craig.
All right, apologies
And,
for guessing wrong there on
No
my second
problem.
attempt. Go ahead.
No worries, man. Yeah, really quickly, I mean, thanks for taking my call, but I think that, like, you know, for me, as far as just like my vibe, I'm just like, okay, I'm indifferent, obviously, to the defense because I know we're just terrible. And
Right.
now that we're playing the Giants, whom are also terrible, I'm still terrified about potentially losing to him despite it being Tommy DeVito. So, I mean, just from an offensive standpoint, I think they just can't overthink it. I do want it to be a more balanced attack. And I don't know what it was like on against Seattle this Sunday, but I just want to be in more third and manageable. And obviously that means us just being a little bit more balanced and running the ball, letting EB call a bit of a more less complicated game and not trying to just keep throwing the ball and just letting Sam just try to be spectacular because he doesn't need to be against this Giants team. And I don't want Wink Martindale to continue owning us again, but just getting if it's going to be third down, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, second and manageable, just have those kind of situations. And obviously the run is going to be a big proponent of that. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to do that. So.
Yeah, no, Noel, thanks for the call. Much appreciated. I totally agree. I think they have to execute better offensively. And some of that is, you know, Sam executed a pretty high level on Sunday. But there are some times where he's missing some bigger stuff down the field, and you'd love to see that. I mean, I'd love to see that as a quote-unquote mistake compared to some of the stuff that was happening earlier in the year. But that's the growth of a young quarterback. Can the receivers more consistently get open? Seattle's DBs owned them. Can the offensive line bow up a little bit more? And then, obviously, can you execute in the run game? These are the questions that I have, and they're going to have to be on top of their stuff. And they're going to have to target stuff correctly against a Wink Martindale defense that does junk it up quite a bit. And you see what happens when you do. Like Dallas dropped 49 on them. But we'll see what happens coming up on Sunday. And I too am scared to see what is going to happen with the Giants, who has been the absolute like arch nemesis bugaboo of this team for going on a decade. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, if not longer. We're always live on the free Odyssey app, and we're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And to the email I just got and to the phone call that wants Greg Williams as defensive coordinator, no. Just no. There's a reason he's not in the league right now. Oh, my God. The desire for retreads, I will never understand. That's the answer to your question / your email. And really, Anthony, I looked down at my phone, and I have an email that talks, like, from a listener talking about Greg Williams.
That's insane.
Stop. Be smarter. You don't have to be whatever. You know who's really smart? Seth Walder from ESPN. He's going to join us next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, I have to thank you, even though that is a mildly embarrassing opening for me. It wasn't one of the ones where I failed at math, which is a nice gift for you, considering the guest we're about to have.
No problem.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
So I wanted to have our next guest on for a little bit now because I think there's a fascinating conversation to be had about what analytics actually do for an NFL team. There's a lot of talk about what that looks like, and I think a lot of people think it's just like, go for it on fourth down all the time. And it's way deeper than that, and that's also not actually what the numbers say. So let's talk to someone who knows what they say and who knows this world very well. It's Seth Walder from ESPN. Seth, thanks so much for doing this, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So if I start with that incredibly broad question of, like, what do analytics do and how are they used in the NFL? If I give you like an elevator pitch style to pitch the audience on it, what does that actually look like in the broadest terms?
It's touching a whole bunch of different aspects of running a football team, and that's why it's a year-round job. So, yeah, like the obvious, like you said, is game management. So fourth downs, two-point conversions. This is where I think it's the most apparent to everyone, obviously, its impact. And that is absolutely a role. That is a thing where quantitative analysis can help. But then I think a large piece of it is the unseen, like you're alluding to. And that's where I would call the biggest piece of that, I would say, would be player evaluation. I mean, we have all sorts of metrics and statistics and new methods, and teams have things they're not sharing with anybody else to evaluate players. Football is a super complex game, and so this has evolved a lot, even over the last 5 years. And so when you're talking about free agency, talking about the draft, talking about how you're churning your roster, all of that is driven by player evaluation, and quantitative analysis can play a huge role in that. I think there's also elements of roster building, like what's the optimal way to build your roster and your stack, and then maybe that loops into like the value of draft picks, right? It's going to drive your decisions around trades in the draft with draft picks, and then there's game planning. So I think adding quantitative analysis to your game planning in the sense of, you know, who's your opponent, what do they run, and then what statistically might work against what they run, or there's a lot in there. And so when you all of that together is where I think analytics can play a role.
So let's focus in on a couple of those areas. And I want to start with the team building element, because it definitely came up for the Commanders around the trade deadline, as Eugene Shen was a part of those conversations, and they ultimately decide to trade Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And part of the reason given is, like, a bad way to build a roster is to spend too much in one area. What have you learned about roster building by looking at data over the last decade, or however long you've been doing this? But really, the NFL has been doing this for a decade and a half, 2 decades at this point, with some of the more advanced stuff. I mean, people have been. The funny thing is, just to sidebar for a second, is people have been guessing at analytics for years. They just didn't know it. It was gut feeling, and it's like, oh, when we do this, it works. And then people started keeping track of it and actually crunching the numbers, and some of those things were right and some were wrong, and people got really mad at the stuff that they were wrong about. Putting that aside, on the roster building side of things, what has changed in the way that teams think about building a roster due to the data available?
Well, I think, like, first and foremost, you can call it analytics, you can call it thinking logically. In the situation with the Commanders, it's like you're looking at timeline and allocation of resources. So I actually don't have specific numbers on, like, paying for pass rushers, but I think it's pretty obvious that's probably not the best way to go. And I'll tell you, it's extremely obvious when we think about that. It wasn't really working for them. Right. Like, they had all 4 of those guys together, and it wasn't resulting in an awesome pass rush. So I feel like that's probably not going to be 4 $20 million guys for you. Like, that's clearly that wasn't working out. I think for the Commanders, like, they're not a real contender right now. And so the cost of retaining, I think with Montez Sweat, right, like the second half of his season is a value to someone a real contender more than he was for you. Now, ironically, the Bears came in and beat everybody out for the pick, and now it's a terrible move for them, but that's a different story.
Right.
It's not the Commanders' problem that they wanted to pay so much. Ultimately, they can take those resources and basically transfer them into the future, and it's looking at, okay, we have Sweat now, but then you get this pick, and now you're going to have this cost-controlled asset for 4 years. So I think a lot of it has to do with like valuing draft picks and understanding that the value is not just the pick, but it's the potential of gaining the player in addition to that player if they pan out being cost-controlled for 4 years.
Seth Walder with us, who's sports analytics specialist at ESPN. Does such a good job of providing analytics-based information on his platforms on ESPN.com. His platforms like Twitter, for instance, a must-follow every Sunday. So then you get to like the schematic stuff, and this is actually to me the most interesting part of this because we actually just were talking about this before you came on with a caller. Like I think that some of the data has been twisted and taken to an extreme where it's not actually that helpful. By nature, data is stuff that has already happened. And, you know, teams that are trying to use it for offense or use it for defense, if like they're taking an offensive number, they both have access to it. So if the defense sees an offensive thing that's working, they'd be like, okay, well, how do we stop it? And then those numbers are going to change. How are teams tracking kind of the evolution and how the numbers shift and how that changes schematically, and how much of that is like data driven versus like, okay, we see the trend, we think it's about to turn, we want to be literally ahead of the curve?
Great question. I don't know in some ways, I don't know the answer, right? Like, I think it's really hard to know at a given time, like a team makes a decision about what kind of offense or defense they're going to be or something they're going to incorporate. Is it because of the data? You know, I think like an example that I would point to a lot is motion at the snap. We did a study in 2019 or 2018, I think it was. Well, I'll just tell you, like, we looked at motion at the snap when the Ravens were doing a ton of it and found, like, statistically, this was an offensive advantage. Back in 2017, the Rams led the league with 9% motion at the snap. This year, the Dolphins are doing it on like 60-something percent of the play. Did this evolution happen because teams looked at the data and they said, hey, these plays are statistically helping offenses? Or is it that coaches were watching plays and they figured out that, hey, these plays seem to be working quite a lot? I don't know. I probably think it's like the latter, but maybe the former would have helped you come to the conclusion sooner. That part, I don't know, but we certainly have seen this trend happening. I think like right now, something we're looking at is like simulated pressure. Again, the Ravens sort of ahead of the curve on that, where they're having teams statistically are having more success when they use simulated pressure compared to blitzing or just a sort of regular coverage snap. So it's hard to pinpoint the cause, but I think that it's useful to you as a team if you can try to spot these advantages in the numbers.
Yeah, no, totally. And I also think that like data is just numbers, and you know how you implement that is the actual important thing, because a spreadsheet cannot play football, which is like something that an old school football coach would say is a reason not to use any of it at all. And it's like, no. Actually, the extremes. We're both wrong here. How do you marry it all together? Which brings me to, again, a more specific Commanders question. And one of the most studied things is like the run-pass discrepancy. I have come to the conclusion in watching the Commanders as an analyst this year that they are under some threshold, and I don't know exactly where this threshold is, where they are actually passing the ball too much. Even though all the EPA data and everything says passing the ball is more efficient and more effective, teams that have to account for the run play you a certain way, and there is some schematic advantage that because the Commanders are so one-dimensional, they are losing. Not to mention there's a volume issue in terms of pressure and sacks and these other things. How much is that run-pass discrepancy being discussed in the NFL, and what are some of the more interesting studies or more interesting points that have been made on it?
I'm glad you asked about this. To me, this is a fascinating subject because it's like football is such a complicated game, and yet there is this run-pass discrepancy that is extremely basic, and it is both complex and simple in that on average teams don't pass enough. I think the Commanders are a really interesting case. Like you said, this is a team that has the highest design pass rate in the NFL. They are second in the NFL if we look at design pass rate just when win probabilities between 15 and 85%. So, like, the game is still in question. And, yeah, I'm interested to hear why you say you think they're passing too much, because despite all of that, their EPA per dropback is 0.0, and their EPA per design carry is negative 0.09. So basically, for every 10 run plays, they are losing a point on the scoreboard in terms of score differential, and the dropbacks they're even. So the numbers are telling us this is a more efficient team passing the ball, despite all of the Sam Howell stack problems and at times, interceptions, whatever. Like, all of that, they have been more efficient on dropbacks despite that. So you think they're passing too much. That's interesting.
So to me, it's like more efficient dropbacks. But as crazy as this sounds, if they ran the ball a little bit more, would that number on the dropbacks actually be a little bit higher? Because would it slow down the pass rush, right? Like, it's the counterfactual that is unknown.
I think that's feasible, except, like, we know that if teams were operating optimally, those two numbers should be the same, right?
I would say not necessarily, because, like, if I told you as a defensive coordinator, I'm going to pass it 100% of the time, there is zero threat of a run. There is going to be a way that you play me schematically in terms of how you deploy your resources. And this is completely, like, non-numerical. It's total X's and O's, total schematics, total whatever. And maybe there is a way eventually that because like you've said a couple times, I want to underscore this point for the audience, like, football is ridiculously multifactorial. It is actually hard compared to a game like baseball to get everything into some formula, because on any given play, you've got 22 guys on the field. That's already 22 factors. Nevertheless, whatever other things might go into that. But if I tell you on a very simple level, I'm going to pass the ball 100% of the time, you are going to drop back players in coverage. You're going to, maybe double my number one receiver. Like, you could get crazy with how you scheme that up to make my life difficult. If I tell you, hey, it could be run, it could be pass, you're going to play that differently. You're going to play it more honest. And I think the problem for the Commanders is twofold. And the second part I want to get to in a second. But the first part is they are not maintaining that honesty from the defense, and it's actually making it harder when they do pass to do so. So while they are more efficient passing than running, I think if they ran a little bit more, their passing number, like their efficiency passing, would actually go up. Their big play potential would go up. Safeties come up. You can throw over the top. All those kinds of things happen. I think there's also some yet to be quantified impact on the defense, which is one of the worst in football, that I do want to talk to you about, but we can get there when we get there.
Wait, can we stay on this for 1 second? Because I think it's really interesting.
Absolutely.
So I like your example, right? If we 100% agree. If we said, let's say the Commanders, let's say you're the OC and you tell the other team, I'm going to pass 98% of the time, right? We would both agree, I think, that your 2% run plays, those are going to be pretty good, right? They're going to be more efficient than your passing plays, right? If it's 90%, it's probably your run plays are probably going to be more efficient than your run plays, right? Where do we stop? I would argue, stop when you get to the part when your running plays are no longer more efficient than your passing plays.
Well, I guess it also, like, there's some, this is more your department than mine. I'm notoriously terrible at math, and here I am having this very philosophical conversation about numbers with someone who does this for a living. But I guess I'm going to use a training analogy because I'm also a trainer, and this is where my brain went. But it's like the force velocity curve, right? There's a point where, like, if I'm telling you we're pushing a sled, and I'm hoping everyone won't get lost with this analogy, right?
I'm Googling force velocity curve as we go.
Right. But, like, there's a force equals mass times acceleration. And if I give you a very light sled, you can run with it as fast as you can, but there's not enough mass to create the force, right? The M and the A are the two factors here. There is a very low number of M. There's a high number of A. You don't get very much F. Force equals mass times acceleration. If I give you a very heavy sled, you can't move it fast enough to generate maximum force. At some point, the mass times the acceleration is at a point where you're running pretty fast and the sled's pretty heavy, and it generates the biggest number. So I guess to take it back to the running passing thing is like your total EPA when it's at its maximum, that's the number we should be looking for. And if we can sacrifice a little on one to gain a lot on the other, that seems worth it as opposed to the two numbers being equal.
Right. So it's feasible. You're right. Like I'm not saying that. You're right. So you're saying you sacrifice, like if you're going to run more and you think that the impact on the passing game will be larger than
the negative impact
on the run, because there's going to be a loss on the run.
Right. The negative impact is worth it because you get such a boost on the pass. And maybe you have data that says that I'm a total buffoon and that is wrong. But I watching this team this year and also seeing like because of the sack yardage, because of some of the volume issues they've had, well, yes, it's still more efficient. They've been able to overcome some of it. I also wonder, and then you get into like elements of sustainability. Like if Sam Howell continued to be sacked the rate he wasn't going to survive the season. And you want to see your EPA drop, lose your starting quarterback. So there's like things like that obviously go into it, which is why this stuff is so endlessly fascinating because the analytics give you a number and it's up to the beholder to interpret it, which is why getting good interpreters is very important.
It's true, and like you said at the beginning, we can't know the counterfactual, right? We are guessing here, but ultimately we have not seen this world, this alternate reality where the Commanders pass, 62% of the time instead of 72% of the time.
Right. Is there anything? Seth Walder is our guest here for a few more minutes. We've already taken quite a bit of Seth's time. I very much appreciate it. And if you need to go, you can like throw up a hand or something auditorially, and we'll let you go.
No, we're good.
But here for a few more minutes, if we can. Has there been any research done to the tie on the defense? Because, for instance, we see on Sunday the Commanders' defense totally break down at the end of the game. Part of that is very much their own fault. They gave up a ton of first downs. Seattle runs 80 plays, but it's also they're able to run 80 plays because the Commanders' offense went 3 and out a ton, and there wasn't a lot of time elapsed, for instance. So despite going 4 of 14 on third down, Seattle still wins the time of possession for the game. And we've kind of thought for years, football people have thought, like, you got to run the ball to help out your defense a little bit, give them a blow. And there's just like a human performance side of that of, hey, and when you're tired, you don't perform as well. So what kind of research, if any, has been done into the tie of these run-pass splits and time of possession and defensive performance?
Yeah, so it makes sense, right? Obviously, the more you play, the more tired you will get. I think the flaw in the thinking is that only time when the clock is turning when the game clock is turning helps players rest. Like all time helps players rest. And so the best way to do that would be to convert first downs. And what's the best way to convert first downs? It's to pass the ball usually.
Right.
And so I think that is the difference. I've seen research to suggest that it is not that running a lot does not help your defense recover. I think whether the question is like, does your defense need time to recover? I think logically it makes sense. But if you throw an incomplete pass, no time passes off the clock, your defense still gets the time to rest. And by and large, the best thing that your offense can do is to convert new first downs.
Right. So I guess the better way to ask the question that might be a little bit more studied is then the difference, of course, is when the clock is stopped, that is time that still has to be played. And so your defense might have to ultimately play more. So like shorter versus longer games, is that an area that has been looked at? Because I think that would be pretty fascinating.
True, but that's true for the opponent too.
Sure. But I guess it kind of goes to the, an offshoot of the, and I feel very weird about this, Seth. I'm just going to say, I feel like some of this sounds very anti-analytics, and it's not. I'm just questioning to understand what has and hasn't been studied because it is, and like there's endless factors here. But it's kind of the similar to the 2-point logic, right? Like if you're on the road and you're the underdog, you should go for it because you want a certain level of variance versus the alternative. And I just wonder too if like if you're the Commanders and you have one of the worst defenses in the league, do you want a game with more or less variance if that defense is good or not?
Right. No, I hear you. It's a good question. I haven't seen research suggest whether a longer game produces more variance from a defense. But I think it's a reasonable question. It's a little tricky to investigate because you're going to have to control for the fact that better offensive teams are going to have more plays, higher scoring games, longer games. And so you're going to have to control for that. But that's totally doable.
There we go. Now we've given Seth a homework project. It probably not. Last but not least, Seth, and again, really appreciate your time. Seth Walder, sports analytics specialist at ESPN. What do you know about Eugene Shen specifically? He's been around the league for a long time. He's pretty well revered in the analytics community. I'm very excited that he is here, and I think he's already probably made some impact on this team and will obviously help shape the roster build and rebuild moving forward. What do you know about Eugene Shen, and why is he so well-liked and well thought of?
Yeah, I think one thing that's sort of funny is people say to me, is this person good? Is this person good? And it's hard for me to always know because it's like, well, if you work for a team, it's not like I see any of your actual work, right? I certainly talk to people, but like I've never seen a line of code that they've written. I think Eugene Shen has, though, a lot of experience, and he's highly regarded, like you said. And to me, that's like a really significant data point. It's one of the reasons why I do an analytics survey each or every other year, just talking to people about, thoughts on other teams and other people, because the people that I think know best are other analytics staffers themselves. And so to me, the idea that Shen is well regarded is significant, important, and he's a real analytics person. He's been in this for a long time. He's worked in 3 previous NFL organizations. Like, you are getting a true NFL analytics vet in him. And to me, I thought that the title that they gave him was really telling. I mean, that's a big job. And that says to me, I'm speculating, but like that says to me that, this is a team headed in a quantitative direction. Like I think a lot of people expected when Josh Harris bought the team, but still, like, you got to see that move happen. And I would say that's a big move. And I think I would feel after that happens and the team immediately makes that, I would say, call very strong Montez Sweat trade, to me, that's a really good sign for the Commanders going forward.
No, I totally agree. All right, last thing, because I just gave you a bunch of stuff that I'm super interested in and have thought about in this realm, but you live in this every day. What's the thing that you want to study, that, like, the question you want to answer that you think data can help answer?
Oh, I mean, many things, but I feel like schematic factors are still like what I would consider a blind spot for me, but numbers wise overall, right? Like, I feel like we all know and agree that the 49ers and the McVay, Shanahan and their offshoot systems are offensively advantaged, right? They help their teams. How do we see that in the data? Like, what are the factors that they are putting together that are contributing to that? And then how do we adjust for, say, like quarterback production as a result of that? To me, that's somewhat of a blind spot where I sort of have to, you sort of got to look at Brock Purdy and say, I think he's playing really well, but you got to factor in sort of nebulously that he's playing in this system. And that, I think, coaching is just clearly so important in the NFL. And like schematic wise. And so I think that is a place where we are headed, but there's a lot more work to be done before we can be there.
So it sounds like a lot of the stuff that we talked about, which is pretty cool. Seth Walder.
Safeties, they're the hardest position to quantify. I need more on safeties.
Oh, I like that too. Yeah, I can tell you that if your safety misses, is the last line of defense, and he misses a tackle in the hole, it's very bad, and the opposing team will 100% of the time, at least if they're playing the Commanders the last 2 weeks, score a 64-yard touchdown. That,
folks, is analytics.
That is analytics. Anthony, you might have to clip Seth saying that and keep that on the board. That, folks, is analytics. Seth, thank you very much. We will definitely have you back. This was a great conversation, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.
All right, Seth Walder, everybody. Read his work, ESPN.com. When we get back, we're going to go from Seth Walder to Lynnell Willingham. We're the only show that can do that. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And it is time for Overreaction Tuesday. Bum-ba-da-bum. Here is Lynnell Willingham with his takes, which we will judge as overreactions or not. I'm sure the post game was just a delight on Sunday, Lynnell.
Yeah, I took it kind of hard because it's just frustrating. You know, when you look at this season as in its entirety, and you go back to like what the dialogue was back in August, what the dialogue was back in the spring. I think what's happening right now is the complete opposite of what we all anticipated. I thought this defense would be the unit that leads this group to the promised land if they got there. And I thought we would have to work through Sam Howell's growing pains. And at this point, I thought he'd be way further behind than he actually is. Now, obviously, that's a positive, but I guess this is my first overreaction. We need wholesale changes on defense going into the offseason. Like, I think from coordinator to, I don't even think there's a player on this defense that shouldn't be considered expendable. I don't know how eager I would be to sign anyone to a contract extension right now on this defense. And I'm more so disappointed talking about defense with the play of our two defensive tackles, the two most talented guys left on this defense. Really felt like Sunday in particular against Seattle, they once again just weren't impactful enough for my liking in terms of them not maintaining their gaps on some of these runs that are happening on first and second down. I believe Ron talked about it yesterday. The reason Seattle was so successful offensively, to use Logan's phrase, it felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts with some of the 6 and 7 yard runs they're getting on first down. It kept them in these third and manageable situations, and they were able to convert at a pretty high clip. Tackling wasn't good all around. It just was a bad day defensively. And I think when you're in year 4 of running the same stuff with most of the same personnel, I think it's pretty inexcusable to have the type of issues Washington's having.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. Wholesale changes, yeah, for sure. Like, you need a couple players. I mean, they also need to get like guys back. I mean, Defoe to Percy. Like, what happens there? Hopefully in year number 2. Like, I mean, actually, the funny thing is, like, Percy actually had
playing Defoe.
I think, yeah. Well, I don't know if he's out playing like what Defoe was last year. Maybe what Defoe was earlier this year. He actually was way better on Sunday on second watch than I thought. I just, you can't every week as a safety be the last guy there and miss a tackle. Like,
yeah, it's a big part of the job.
That's like the most important part of the job in 2 weeks in running. Like, you give up a big play because Percy can't be your last line of defense reliably, at least yet. Maybe he's getting better. So that's good, but he's a young football player. Obviously, Quan's going to continue to get better. Forbes has to be there, but he had his best game of the season against New England. Like, what does that look like? But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, they're a bottom 5, bottom 3 unit in every statistical category. Like, they're or all the big ones, like the composite, like yards, they're the worst.
Explosive.
Points, they're the second worst, a ton. I think they're 30th in defensive DVOA. Like, they're just bad, and there is no good reason why they're this bad. But at this point, like, it's technique, it's consistency of execution. They just don't have good players. I mean, there's injuries that impact it. I know no one is like, oh yeah, Cody Barton, but like Barton to Mayo is a drop off. And you see on some big plays where there's some big plays where Mayo does really fantastic stuff because he's a good run player. And if you can get him in the flat, like, he's a sure tackler more often than not, but he's not the coverage player. He can't cover the space that Barton can. Davis has 10 tackles, but can he make a play? Like, you need him to be an inch taller on that play down in the fourth quarter where the ball goes right over his hands. I also think that this defense got hurt when James went out. Like, FA is kind of more of a freelancey type of player, and he creates a little bit of pressure here, but like, he's out of his gap on a run there, and James is just more solid for what this defense needs. But then if you have James on one side or Casey on one side, can you get an impact rusher on the other and like get more pressure off the edge? I think John played better on Sunday than people realize, but I don't think he's playing as impactfully, like that superstar level that you're after. And so I agree with like the way you phrase that they're not being, Allen and Payne are not being as impactful as you'd like and as this defense is designed for them to be.
One thing I would say on John, I know it was a big point of emphasis this year at the big O-line masterminds meeting to try to stop John Allen's hump move. Like, that is become one of the more difficult codes to crack in all of the NFL in terms of offensive linemen. And I think that is really, to me, what's been the big glaring difference is when the hump move's not working, can you go to something else to try and generate pass rush? That's more so why I feel like he's not really impactful in the pass rush game right now. And then with the runs, it feels like, and it's hard to tell these guys not to do this because it's what makes them special. The play doesn't care who makes it, is the way that I will phrase it. If they just had all 11 guys in their gap on these runs, then like they don't hit for 6 and 7 yards. You stop them for a 2-yard gain. It's just, I understand what they're going through. They feel like they got to make plays, and they feel like if, jumping out of my gap is going to make the play. But if you don't make the play, then you're kind of screwed defensively. And that's happened a lot. And it happened last year when they needed run stops the most. Even when they had Chase and Montez last year, like that is the reason to me defensively they struggled at the end of the year. Cleveland comes in your house and runs the ball all over you. You couldn't get a stop against Saquon on the second Sunday night game running the football. So I think that's a problem that has continued into this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's hard because they did, like, there's actually some good stuff that they do defensively on Sunday. I mean, 4 of 14 on third down is a good day at the office.
Yeah.
And if you had told me that was going to be the situation before the game, I probably would have said they would have won. And really, up until those last 2 drives in the fourth quarter, like, they were playing pretty good ball, like 19 points, and you're not getting a lot of support from the offense in those first 3 quarters either. And you're playing decent ball, and then in the gotta have it moment, they can't come up with a stop. Like, they've got the 4th down conversion on the BSJ PI. Then the last drive is just super inevitable. You're like, oh, well, they're not going to get a stop here. And you give up the final 10 points of the game. And that's ultimately how you go from 19 points and a solid performance to losing 29-26. And I think it's also important to remember, though, like, that's the NFL. Like, those are the margins. Is
right.
Like, great teams are good 97% of the time. Bad teams are good 94% of the time, or whatever it is. Margins are small. Can you do it 97% of the time? If so, you're going to win football games. If not, you're not. And that's how you give up 500 yards and 29 points and, all the other things they gave up, all the season high number of first downs that Seattle got, the explosives that they gave up. Like, it's all there, even if they were able to bow up a bunch on third down after giving up some of that stuff. But you wear yourself down because you're out on the field for 80 plays and you see the result at the end of the game.
I think something that was, and I said this during the postgame, the thing that was most disheartening defensively was the final possession. Because I just feel like, and tell me if I'm overreacting here, there was just no situational awareness, I felt like, from the defensive backs. There's no way you're playing, and I understand the style of defense that Jack Del Rio plays. They play their DBs a little off. They're trying to give you cushion. Mm-hmm. It's a bend but don't break. They're doing all of that to prevent giving up the big one over the top. And naturally, if you play off, it's easier to get beat deep. But in that situation where a field goal beats you, you got to be more aggressive at the line of scrimmage in terms of getting hands on DK Metcalf. There's no way he gets 2 free inside releases on the easiest pitching catches that you'll ever see from him and Geno Smith in that moment. That was something that was kind of frustrating me because it's like, well, maybe I'm just looking at it too simplistically, but you got to get hands on the guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Logan and I talked about that this morning. And actually, we talked about that in Take 5, which is out now that people can check out. We did a breakdown of that drive, and then we have the full film breakdown tomorrow. But I was like, why? And he's basically like, this is how they run it. Like, this is they ran that pressure, for instance, that they get the slant on the first completion of DK. They ran that pressure 2 other times in the game, and you play it the same on the back end, and like, it worked. You're counting on the pressure getting home. It doesn't, and then you give up the slant. But I think that's kind of the point, is like, you can't just call the same stuff when the game situation is different. You give up a field goal earlier in the game, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you know, as an offense, if you don't score a touchdown, that's not a good drive. Okay, so that means if you give up a field goal as a defense, like, that's an acceptable outcome. You can win games giving up 5 field goals. You can't win games giving up touchdowns. But when you lose the game, if you give up 1 field goal, your calculus needs to change. And it does feel like the lack of situational awareness is a huge issue and has been under Rivera, has been under Del Rio. And I agree with you that, like, shoot, if you get beat on a double move, just grab the guy. Like, take the penalty, whatever, but you can't let the easy stuff go. And I don't think BSJ play, like, I know on the second completion, he's playing for the corner route, which situationally makes some level of sense, right? You don't want to let them get out of bounds, run another play.
Right.
But you got to play that a little bit tighter. You have to be a little more willing to take that risk there. And I just didn't feel like they had a good feel for that situation at all. Those situations are hard, right? It's 53 seconds. They've got
Sure.
timeouts. Like, that is a tough ask for a defense, but it can't be that tactic, like that undramatic. Like, we can't just know that they're screwed from the time that they get started. That's too easy.
It was tough. And going back to Juice, like, he got a lot of flack for like the penalties that he had on the drive leading up to that. But I think he's playing as good a football as anybody in their secondary, man. It's rare that he's not in the hip pocket or on a completion. He's got to get better with his ball skills. That's why it was, a third or fourth round pick.
Yeah, his
It
ball
just
skills
didn't
are
have the
brutal.
interception production. Yeah.
Well, it's not even interceptions. It's like, you're right there all the time, and then there's completions on you. Like, yeah, you get a couple, but there's a reason. Like, there's a reason he gets so much action is because quarterbacks aren't scared of him. And the other thing too, and I started the show talking about this on Monday, or yesterday, is he's a really solid number 2 corner. He's being asked to be a number 1 corner right now, and that's too much for him. Like, he's fine going against plenty of these guys, but you put him against AJ Brown, you put him against DK Metcalf, and like, yikes, bro, that's not good. Take a quick break, come back, more with Lynnell. We'll take a look at the offense next. Overreaction Tuesday, the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Lynnell sticking with us for one more segment here on an Overreaction Tuesday. All right, let's take a look at the offense. Give me your hottest offensive take after this 26-point performance where Sam Howell throws for 300, but they really were not good for a lot of this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait to get to Sam, who I thought, just quick teaser, I thought was brilliant once again for the third straight game, showing a lot of really high level stuff that if your favorite quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes were doing it, he'd be getting that type of praise. I think he's playing at that high of a level right now. this is something that happens with this team. We tend to locally, I guess, hyperbolize the talent that we have here in house because multiple times this season we've seen it. The wide receivers aren't playing with the detail maybe that they should be playing with. And when you put it in that context, I think it makes me a little bit easier on Sam and his struggles toward the beginning of the season because those problems still existed. And when he's playing well, and then the offense is bogged down the way that they were, like you mentioned, for the first 3 quarters, not really having a ton of consistency, I think it has a lot to do with, first of all, Seattle's secondary is brilliant. So it was a tough
Yes.
matchup for our guys, period. But, I expected guys to make more plays. There were some contested catches that weren't made. Guys just not doing a good enough job getting separation. That was an area that kind of concerned me because we talk about this wide receiver core as if they're one of the top 2 or 3 in the NFL. They are paid like they are a top 7 group, and I just didn't see that from them on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think Seattle secondary did a phenomenal job, but like take your good versus my good. Hopefully my good's good enough and their good's not good enough. And Jahan was a complete zero in this game. Terry had some moments, and I think he also was missed by Sam a couple of times where you're like, oh, that's a big play. And some of them are like, Sam just didn't throw it. There's one of them where like he's open for a touchdown deep on like a post corner situation or a corner post. And there's just enough pressure that I don't think Sam feels comfortable like stepping into the throw. And he winds up checking it down. And it's on like a 3rd and 3, and it's the one where he hits Logan Thomas for a first down for like 4 yards. And you're like, okay, you know what? We live with that. He knows Logan is releasing late after chipping. He gets a first down, like no problem with the process. But if the pocket holds, he's got Terry wide open, just has to throw it into grass for a touchdown. So Curtis, first game back, like is he a little rusty? This was probably one of his least effective games. He's been pretty consistent all year, but like at the end of the day, you're right. Like you need more from these guys. And I think it's ironic that we're talking about it, the two of us in this segment, because I think you were correct a couple of weeks ago when you're like, Sam Howell is holding this offense back. And at the time, the way he was playing, like you could make a serious argument that that was the case. However, now you look at it, and Sunday specifically, he's the only reason this offense did anything.
Yeah.
Like the run game was ineffective outside of the one drive. The offensive line is continuing to give up the same amount of pressure. Sam is doing a better job of avoiding the sacks and getting the ball out. He creates all the big plays off schedule. Like B-Rob on the first one, all he's got to do is run straight. Does a great job. Like good job catching the ball, fluid, get down the sideline, make good decisions. But like that's a Sam play. The other play that B-Rob has that's like identical, same kind of situation. Sam's the one making this thing go, which is like, I guess is good long-term, big picture. But for right now, like someone's got to help the guy out. This is not how to win football games, and it is how you are relatively ineffective for 3 quarters.
I do want to like revisit that comment because I think we both said it here about what the offense looked like through the first 3 quarters. I can agree with you. It just wasn't consistent enough. I wanted, it's more of like a question than an overreaction.
Yeah.
I thought Eric called a really good game. It's just when Washington is so reliant upon the quick passing game, I want to see them get to their counters a little bit sooner because it felt like Seattle started squatting on everything. And for the folks out there that think there are no ancillary benefits to the quick passing game, double moves and deep shots are the ancillary benefit, and it helps you create that naturally. Felt like Washington didn't get to it quick enough, and that's part of why they were bogged down. Big picture, though, looking at what Sam and Eric did, because I think we need to start putting them together when we talk about the success of the offense. I'm just floored by his ability to take as many steps in the right direction as he has since that first New York game. And that's kind of like where I'm judging him, pre-New York and post-New York. His internal clock, and that's the way I'll put it in layman's terms, is so much more sped up. And when I say sped up, it's not a bad thing like he's rushing. He's just feeling pressure so much better. Like his peripheral is improved. And that just all comes from being a young quarterback getting snaps. I worried genuinely at the beginning of the season, could he overcome that problem? And for all the folks that are upset about the amount that Washington's throwing the football, he doesn't overcome this problem as quick as he does without the high volume of pass attempts. Being put in that situation over and over and over and over again, I think is helping him. He's seeing things better. He's finding better answers to the test is what I'll say. I think, like you said, the stuff he did off schedule is just, it's top 10 quarterback stuff. It's Dak Prescott. It's Kirk Cousins. I think if he's going to play like that, he's for damn sure in that conversation. And I think it changes the way you need to look at the offseason moving forward, especially since the darling that everyone's drooling over, Caleb Williams, can't play on schedule. I'd rather have Sam Howell than Caleb Williams at this point. And I think moving forward, the mindset needs to be, and I understand there's 7 games left, so you don't want to jump the gun. But if he continues to play like this, you get to a point where it's not worth trading up capital to go get another quarterback instead of just filling the holes around this guy, because it seems like that he's got it. But I'm still not sold on him yet. I want to see it more. But if he's going to show this, he's the guy.
Yeah, no, I think most of what you said there is not an overreaction. I am not deep enough into the draft and studying and knowing Caleb Williams. I mean, obviously he hasn't been as good as people had thought this year at USC, but also like he was supposed to be God. So there's that. It feels a little crazy for a guy that is seen as like one of the better quarterback prospects to come out in a while to say like, yeah, you wouldn't rather have that guy if the choice is in front of you, Sam Howell or Caleb Williams. But it's not that. It's Sam Howell is already on your team. You'd have to trade stuff to go get Caleb Williams. Is that worth the downgrade? And I would say no. And also, I agree with you in the level that Sam is playing right now. It seems like he could not just be like, okay, he's the 17th best starter in the NFL, and that's good enough. What can we build around him on a little bit cheaper contract? Like, no, he could be a top 10 guy like next year if you get a really good O-line in front of him and maybe make his job a little bit easier schematically with some of the choices. I don't know that I fully agree with the idea that if you just, like, by dropping him back, like the baptism by fire, it's now justified. I think there were times that was like overkill. And I still just think like the best way to develop a quarterback is to set him up for success and put him in a game plan that wins games. And like philosophically, the amount that Eric Bieniemy runs the football and the little amount that they work on running the football is detrimental to their chances of winning. And there's like schematic advantages of a team thinking that you're going to run it. So stop giving those up. Quit making it so hard. Sam Howell was pressured 30 times in this game. Like, that's crazy. The PFF number says 30. And so earlier in the year, we're talking about a 10-11 sack game at that number of pressures. And he got it down to 13% in this game, sack to pressure ratio. So he is making massive improvements, and that's great. I don't think he needed to take as many hits earlier in the year for that to happen. So I think that's a slight overreaction. But I do think the level that he's playing, the stuff he creates off schedule, the big-time throws that he has, all that stuff is legit. And I would say that's not an overreaction, say he's a top 10 guy. And I would say it's not an overreaction because it's something that has come out of my mouth already this week. But like the but here is, but to be considered that, you have to do it consistently over time. And we have not seen that yet. He's had 3 really good games in a row. Up next is the opponent where he looked totally inept. So let's see what he does against the Giants. Not that he has to throw for 300, 3 touchdowns, no picks every week, but like, can you avoid the stinkers? Can you avoid some of the pitfalls that you had earlier in this year? We'll see. My bet would be on yes, but like, we'll see. Anything else from the game? Quickly, we got time for a 2-minute version. We got 53 seconds, couple of timeouts. Oh wait, that was a little too close to home. One more take.
I guess we can go there. When your defense can't get stops, it doesn't really matter whether you go for 2 or not.
I don't yes, but that's such a silly take because like then what's the point? Like nothing matters then.
And then the only thing I will argue in that direction is the momentum that your defense gets if you do get the conversion.
So I think this is why I go for 2. Momentum and like urgency, right? Yeah. There's a different psychology for both sides. If you get the 2-point conversion, and obviously if you miss it, you miss it. So you lose, but like they lost anyway. So that to me is a bad negative argument. Like, oh, well, it's going to be tough to get this stop. Well, okay, well then take your risk that if you do get it, it's a win and you don't have to play any more football. But think of the psychology, right? Hey, you go on the field, you get the stop, we win the game, versus go on the field, get the stop, we go to overtime, right? Win the game. Also, offensively, you now have the ramped up pressure of we need to do this, otherwise we lose. The kicker gets on the field. It's a more intense kick. It's not if I miss this, it's not a big deal. It's I got to make this or we win or we lose. So, like, I like that ratcheted up intensity, that ratcheted up pressure, but we'll see. Or I guess we won't see because we know what happened and you don't get to play it again, but we'll see if it comes up again later this year. All right, that's Lynnell Willingham with Chris Russell tomorrow. He's got some overtime this week on 106.7 The Fan. Make sure you check him out, all of those places. Lynnell, thank you, sir, and we'll have you back on an Overreaction Tuesday next week.
My man.
Bang, bang. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Thanks much to Lynnell for his time, to Seth Walder for his. But Ant, you were listening to that conversation, obviously with Lynnell. What did you like? There was one point that you wanted to follow up on. What was it, and what you got to say over there?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Craig. I was sort of kind of in agreement with Lynnell. I feel as though the amount of dropbacks and the amount of pass attempts that Sam has had to, endure this season has ultimately, helped with the development and like sort of kind of like sped up his development quicker than like we'd even like realize. I feel as though early in the season, again, and EB always harped on it. It was more so a lot of that was the first time Sam was going to see, people coming off the edges and, the different defensive disguises and things of that nature. And, they blitzed off the edge quite a lot in the Seattle game. Witherspoon, he was blitzing a lot. They had linebackers blitzing. All Sam did, he rolled with it and then, was able to make some off-schedule stuff. So I just look at, where Sam is in his development, and that's what Ron keeps using as well, because his biggest and best excuse is he's developing, and I think he's developing at a nice, low rate.
I agree with you, and we can't know exactly what level was needed, but I do think it's pretty interesting. And Lynnell said that, and I was like, no, you're definitely onto something here. My question is like, do you if he had 97% of the dropbacks, which is kind of what I've been advocating for, is like 3 to 5% more running the football, 3 to 5% more, stuff that isn't drop back passing. Also, like earlier in the season, like they could have gone to some of this quick game stuff faster. Like, so I guess that's kind of the counter. And I'm talking through this without us, like we're doing this live. There's no prep here, so if I meander a little bit, I apologize. But what's changed the last couple of weeks? Sam has developed. Sam has grown. Sam is getting rid of the ball faster. And some of that is in the drop back game. And his feel for the pocket is a lot better. And reps help, no doubt. Like I would be the first one to tell you as someone who coaches people in anything. For me, it's fitness stuff. But as a coach in anything, right, reps matter. You'd like your quarterback or your athlete to not take live hits. It's why you do your reps in the weight room. It's why you do your reps in practice. And they obviously spend a lot of time doing that. But ultimately, like, if you get 3% fewer dropbacks and 5% fewer, 3% more runs and 2% more quick game earlier in the year, do we really think Sam is that different? Like, part of this is also time elapsed. Like, sure, yes, he's seen more stuff. And that helps the reps. Maybe you don't see a particular look and you learn that one a little bit faster. But I also think that, earlier in the season, if they had been better running the football or they had used some of this quick game stuff and given him better answers early, could they have gotten more first downs and could he have gotten the snaps that way? So it's like to an extent, yes. And I think I got pretty ticked off when Rivera on Monday basically said, we have sacrificed, like, he was asked, why are you okay passing the ball so much now when you wanted to run the ball more last year and previously? And he's like, well, because we want to develop this quarterback. And it's like, so you're literally choosing developing Sam over the team's success. That's crazy to me. If I was another player in that locker room, I'd be pissed. Like, wait, what? Like, I like Sam, but can we try to win the football game? What plays it that you're just like, we probably should run it here. We should throw a quick game. We should throw a screen, but let's see what Sam can do. Like, no. If I was an O lineman who's protecting for him, I'd be pissed. Not at Sam, but at the coaches. You're setting me up to fail. My job is on the line. My career, this is my tape. And you're overexposing me. And you're also making his job, Sam's job, harder. So I just push back on that because I feel like success is the best breeder for success. And so if you are, like, should they be going to I don't know, I'm trying to think of a team, like a Greg Roman game plan, right? We're going to actually run the ball like 50-50. Absolutely not. And so there's like a threshold point here where I think you start to get diminishing returns. And I don't know that they've reached that, but I certainly don't think the returns on the investment of Sam are that much higher now compared to where they would be if they had a smarter game plan in a ton of these games where he's being overexposed and they're not really giving him good answers to the test.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is true, but I just feel as though Sam doesn't learn to, speed up that clock, not hold on to the ball, use the check down without those games early in the season. I think, even in the Seattle game, him using the check down, yes, we would probably love to see it a little bit more, but he's gone to his check down a little bit more. And I think,
for sure,
based on those earlier games in the season, I think that's helped him the most. He did have to take, the bumps and the bruises, but at the same token, he did learn from it. So,
but what if he learned those lessons? So, right, the where we are is they're 4-6 going into week 11.
Yep.
Right? And he's learned these things. What if he learned them by week 13, but you were 6-4 now? You go beat the Giants, you're 7-4. And all of a sudden he's learned them and you're headed to the playoffs. Like, we're talking about a sliding scale here. It's not he learned them because this, or he never would have learned them.
Yeah.
It's maybe the speed. And if you have him learn them maybe a little slower because you help him out and that results in winning more football games, that seems to me a trade-off that's worth it.
Yeah.
The whole point is to win. Like, that's the thing that gets lost in all of this. The whole point of the entire sport is to win. Now I sound like Herm Edwards / Doc Walker. You play to win the game.
Yeah.
Right? So development is important because it helps you win. The whole point is to win. So if your quarterback learns a few more lessons a little bit faster, and again, I'm not advocating for that they did 50-50. I'm just advocating for like a little bit better answers to the test, a little bit less pain for Sam along the way. And if you want to make the argument that the pain is necessary for him to learn these lessons at all, I can't tell you that you're 100% wrong.
Yeah.
I just feel that's ridiculous, and I would have rather won more games along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I just, from like where we are, having come into the season thinking the defense was going to lead the way into like where we are now with the offense leading the way and, us putting all our faith and hope in Sam, it is kind of crazy, but, I mean, that's just where we are. I feel like what we want most out of this season, because I don't think, even if we do end up making the playoffs, we're not legit contenders. But
No.
I think everybody just wants, Sam to, be the shining,
Sure,
piece.
and like, but I guess I just reject the premise that you have to drop him back 100 times a game to
in
develop
order
him.
to the seat. Yeah.
Like, that's stupid. Like, put him in positions to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to manage a game. That's what I would like to see. And he did a great job of that on Sunday in the fourth quarter. He managed the game. They needed a friggin' touchdown drive, and he went out and got it. But, like, they were not great for 3 quarters, and that was a design flaw more than anything that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to see him put in a position to succeed. End of the day. It's a very simplistic and basic argument, but, like, success is good. Winning's cool. Let's do that. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. If you want to leave a comment on what we just talked about in the chat, be our guest. We'll check them out often during the commercial breaks. But if you want to talk about a team that had a disappointing end and a heartbreaking loss, it's the Daily Double. We're going to talk about the Wizards next. Poopy. Cannot believe that they lost that game last night. I mean, where do we even want to begin with the stats from this one, Anthony? They have a 23-point lead going into the fourth quarter. They have a 23-point lead in the second half. They don't score in the final 4:38. They have a 21-1 run at the end of the game. Daniel Gafford, who seemed like he was playing pretty well for the early part of the game and helped the Wizards starters be much better than they have been recently, doesn't play a minute in the fourth quarter. And they lose. They lost the game. I cannot believe they lost the game. I don't have, I know they're bad. And that's the thing. It's like, we're not surprised that the Wizards lost to the Raptors. That's not a surprise at all. But they came out and they were fairly dominant for 3 quarters. And at the end, the complete inability to finish is just galling, stunning. And I think that there's like a checkers and a chess level to this, and we're going to start with the checkers level. But to blow a lead of that magnitude is a total and epic failure on both ends of the court that just shouldn't happen at the NBA level when you have NBA players. And this is not a well-built team. That is by design. That is fine. But it does, I think it brings on a lot of questions about just how bad this year is going to be. You do start obviously asking questions about Wes Unseld Jr., and whether those are fair or not, I want to tackle in a second, or what the answers are to those questions I want to tackle in a second. But I feel like it's a requirement for 3 minutes here to just go, you can't lose that game. What are we doing? How were you watching that live, Anthony?
I was indeed.
So I was watching most of the game, and Rachel had a really long day, and she sits down on the couch eventually, and I was like, would you like to watch something else? And she's like, I really would love to just veg out, and yes. So we flip on The Voice, which is what we watch a lot of weeknights because we're still somehow behind, which is actually great because it's available for us on demand whenever we want. And then I pull up my iPad and I put the game on the iPad to watch. And so I'm kind of peeking out, and the lead just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And at some point I just blurt out in the middle of rehearsals for some duo on Team Gwen. What a sentence. They're about to blow this. The Wizards, at that point, the Raptors were still down 6, if not more. And I was like, the Wizards are about to blow this game.
What?
You just start doing the math, and it's ridiculous. And then, they have a chance to go back or to tie it late. Kuz catches the ball, and he's got a toe out of bounds. And you don't even get your chance. But I think watching Jordan Poole drive and shy away from contact when you're for your career almost a 90% free throw shooter until this year when you're for some reason 76. The general nonchalantness of Poole is starting to really irritate me. It's just and you have the lineup questions that you have, and a guy like Denny Avia is getting a chance down late, and he just bucks it up. It's Keystone Cops stuff, which is unfortunately has a long, proud tradition in Zardo's history of Keystone Cops level of basketball. But I just didn't think, and maybe I'm an idiot. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. And frankly, I will say this too. I don't think it has to be this bad. I think that's the part that actually turns into an interesting discussion.
Yeah, it was definitely painful to watch. But I mean, it's also a Wizards thing to kind of do. We had a 23-point lead in the third. They get it down to 10 to close the fourth. I mean, to close the third. And it's I just had a feeling we were going to lose the game. And then what I really didn't understand was the Raptors were being bullies to us. They were killing us in the paint. And for some reason, we never went back to Daniel Gafford, who's our,
the only big that they have.
Exactly. So I'm just
it's so funny. Mike Muscala's been in the league, and I'm sure he's a great dude, and
Yeah.
there's a real reason that he's been in the league as long as he has. But it seems like everybody loves Mike Muscala as an idea, and then they hate actually playing him. And I'm just I don't know. Everyone says he's good. Why can't he get on the floor? He's very tall.
Super
He
tall.
played 7 minutes last night. And he's DNP'd a bunch of times this season. He's only played in 6 of the 10 games.
Wow.
Like, he's your backup 5. You have to play him.
Yeah, so, I mean, they went away from – I don't know what their game plan was in the fourth quarter, to be honest. We couldn't put the ball in the basket, couldn't draw up anything out of timeouts, turnovers left and right. Like, we allowed the Raptors to literally go on a 16-0 run just to end the game, and it's just like, wow, such a Wizards thing to do.
So here's where this becomes the chest level discussion, because everyone immediately just wanted to crush Wes last night. And in a regular season where the point is to win every game that you possibly can, I think he did a poor job last night. What I think we have to keep in mind is that's actually not his job right now, which feels really bad. And in some ways, this is a cousin of the discussion we just had about Sam and the development for the Commanders as quarterback as being, is it more important than the team, right? I think the NFL and the NBA are very different beasts. I think in the NFL, one, the Commanders are in a very different place from a talent standpoint than the Wizards. That's thing one. Thing two, the NFL is a much flukier league. It's a much more even league. And there is a little bit of that any given Sunday type of thing where the NBA is like, nah, they're not going to win very many games. Like, we get it. We all understand the score here. Right. So what's the primary goal of the Wizards season? It is to be at as good a possible position to build a championship team moving forward. So last night, if you're playing checkers, right, you want to win the game. I don't bring Jordan Poole back. I play with Tyus Jones. I play with Landon Shamet. I play with a group that was much better than anything that happened when Poole was on the floor. But that's not my goal. My goal is to best position myself moving forward, which means either Jordan Poole is going to be a part of my future, and I need him to figure it out, or I need him to figure it out so his trade, like, you're fattening him up in terms of his stock, and we need you to score 25 a game so we can trade you for 2 first-round picks. Because right now, we're getting squadouche for you because you've been pretty brutal.
Georgia is making this happen
and
for
so,
you and your family tonight.
If that's the case,
in the stands tonight when
10 games into the season especially, like, you're just going to have to live with this. And the same thing is true for, like, a guy like Denny. Do I really, if I'm a good team, want Denny Avdia going ISO on a late possession? No, I don't. Like, straight up, hard pass, no. Do I want Denny Avdia on
Which
this
should happen
team
under
to do it so that he gets that experience and in a future playoff game 3 years from now he feels comfortable doing it because he's made his mistakes 3 years ago? Yeah, that is what I want to happen. I want him to get his turn, or that we've traded him for someone else. And I think that there's going to have to be a shift here soon because you don't want to just lose everything in terms of your culture, and you need to reward people that are playing well and displaying good habits, which is why Bilal Coulibaly, I know that there's a huge emphasis on saying his name correctly, so I will summon my inner ability to speak very little French and say Coulibaly, needs to be on the floor more and in crunch situations, but you also don't want to overload him. Like, he's 19, he's so far at the beginning of his journey that the middle isn't even visible, nevertheless the end. And so there's going to be a management here that is going to feel very stupid and feel like Wes Unseld Jr. is a bad coach. And this is not me actually defending Wes. Outside of, I guess, last night to an extent, I am. It's just saying that, like, the job of winning NBA basketball games doesn't seem to actually be his job right now. And if you get to a point where that is his job and his rotations still are nonsensical or decision-making in-game, his feel for it feels very off, then I think you need to have a different discussion. And there are moments where I'm sure Michael Winger and Will Dawkins are assessing that. But at the end of the day, the best thing for the franchise right now, unfortunately, is to let these players who are doing very silly things or playing very poorly in very key situations or horrendously unpredictable each night, which is also the hard part for Wes's job. It's like, what's your closing lineup? I don't know. It's Tuesday. Ask me again on Wednesday, and it'll be different. And on Thursday, it'll be different. And on Friday, it'll be different because none of these guys are that good. But on any night, any number of them can be kind of good. It's just impossible. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at on the Zardos. We'll probably have this discussion multiple more times this year. And we're happy to continue it if you'd like. Next, 301-230-0980. Happy to take some whiz calls. Happy to get back into the Commanders. Also, we might pop a little what else happened this weekend because there was a big event that I want to talk about at least for 2-3 minutes in this as well before we get to the end of the show. The end of the show is coming. Real things before the end of the hour. Final half hour on the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Taking a couple calls on the Wizards. How about that on a Tuesday? If you missed Commanders Talk earlier in the show, rewind in the free Odyssey app. Every single one of our shows is available for up to 24 hours that way. You just rewind to the segment that you want to listen to, bada bing, bada bam, and you can check out Vibe Check Tuesday. You can check out Overreaction Tuesday with Lynnell. You can check out Seth Walder from ESPN talking analytics. Also, of course, the podcast, a great way to catch up on demand if you prefer. All right, let's go to Dean on the Ace Law listener line. Dean, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks, Craig, man. I'm a driver, so I'm always listening to 980. I appreciate y'all.
Oh, appreciate
100%.
that. Thank you, man.
No problem, man. Y'all do a great job as far as, especially you, man, with the analytics and understanding the actual breakdown of what the young people understand and what the older people like myself try to understand. But, look, it's just like Ron, man. It's just like Ron with Wes. You know what I'm saying? Ron and Jack Del Rio with Litton St. Juice go through the first series before we gave up the overtime. Well, not even the overtime. The next drive, and not help him. Del Green said something about Forbes. The man needs help, and then hung up the phone and dropped the mic. All right. At the end of the day, that's exactly what we're talking about. With Wes Unseld and being like, you're the head coach. You have to know more, or you have to be able to create more out of the players and be able to put guys in the right position to win. All right. Now that Wes has been with the Wizards for 3 years, and we've watched him fumble wins in the fourth quarter, third quarter, second quarter, whenever quarter, he just fumbles it. But now it's buffoonery now. It's like we're watching a Shakespeare fool with him in the fourth quarter, because now they're waiting to plot for the fourth quarter. You know, I don't know what Wes is doing right now. I don't know if he's the run and shoot with having a sixth man be your number one with Jordan Poole.
Right, but like, what's the other option on this roster? Like, that's the problem. I get the frustration, Dean. I really do. Let me just say this real quick, and I'm curious your thoughts on this as someone who clearly watches a lot and cares a lot. The difference, one, I've talked football a little bit with Rivera, but I've listened to endless amounts of press conferences. I've never been impressed. I've talked basketball with Wes Unseld. That dude knows what he's talking about. Like, personally, someone who goes to games and like has had the chance to talk.
Go upstairs.
Yeah, he definitely, like, he knows his stuff. Being able to apply it is different.
Let Vanderpool take over. Because Vanderpool still deals with the actual the player development process. All right, Wes is a guy. He understands obviously the NBA, and I'm gonna back up off of that. But at the end of the day, when we're playing on the court, and when we play on the field, that's players, athletes doing what they need to do. You're a personal trainer. You want great performance out of each person in front of you.
Sure, but I also realize that there's some clients that can lift 500 pounds and some that can lift 180. And if I put if I am given, so like, sure, can I help people grow? Yes, but like, there's also limitations on that. Knowing your own limits is important, and I think this is the
millions of dollars to do that for a team setting.
Right, but like, Wes can only cook with the ingredients that he's given, and that's the thing. I don't know if Wes Unseld is a good chef. I just know for the entire time he's been here, I'm pretty sure the ingredients are not very good.
I can appreciate what we got on the table right now. But for me, for real, I can go to the court and organize stuff a little better than I'm getting on the. Why am I giving Kuz and Poole the green light and the run and shoot, and 50% of their decision making is terrible. Terrible.
Well, who else are you giving those possessions to?
Sets. But again, though, that's the reason why you have to get sets. That's why the point guard.
Dean, you want guys who don't have any discipline to run sets?
No, that's why we have the point guard that we have. The point guard that we have, he has a ratio of point ratio to a point to
it's assist to turnover
assist
ratio. Is what you're looking
exactly.
for.
It's excellent.
Sure.
But see, he's not dynamic. See, again, that's what I'm saying. If he concentrate on offense and say, hey, look, this is what. That's why when we come out of breaks, when we come out of halftime timeouts, and what we had to deal with last night, we don't know where we're going.
All right, Dean, I'm going to let you go because we're up against the clock. But thank you for your call. Thank you for your kind words, and I very much appreciate it. Here's the thing. Like, at the end of the day, a guy like Tyus Jones has a high assist-to-turnover ratio, and as a good assist-to-turnover ratio, I should say, right? Lots of assists, very few turnovers. He's also not that aggressive, and he doesn't take a lot of risk. So his usage rate is not very high compared to a Jordan Poole or a Kyle Kuzma, who have the ball in their hands more and are responsible in like high leverage situations for making decisions. If your solution is, well, let's put the ball in high leverage situations in Tyus Jones' hand, he's going to turn the ball over more. He already has this year, and I can think of some late clock situations where all of a sudden he's got the ball in his hands, he's stuck, he tries to dribble and make a play off the bounce, and he turns the ball over. So there's 100-ish, 110 possessions in a basketball game. They got to get passed around to someone. And the Wizards don't currently have anyone who is worthy of a significant, like a star's worth amount of them. And I would argue that the entirety of the time that Wes has been here, that has been true. The closest is probably Kristaps Porzingis, but he is best as a 2 or a 3, not a 1. The injured version of Bradley Beal that has been here the last couple of years is not that player. Kyle Kuzma, again, he's a 2 or a 3, and his development has been fantastic since he's been here. And I think Kyle's actually kind of Kyle Kuzma's good. I thought Jordan Poole was way better, and I thought that they could help him be way better, and maybe eventually they will. We are only 8 games, or I guess 10 games now into this season. I think that's important perspective to watch something that is so at the beginning rebuild and grow. And again, I'm not telling you that I know Wes Unseld Jr. is a great coach or even a good coach. I'm telling you that I don't feel like he is a chef wandering around a kitchen with like shards of food everywhere trying to put together a meal, and that is in no way to be a chef. And the goal is to eventually give him good ingredients and then be like, hey, bro, can you cook? And we're going to find out, hopefully within the next couple of years, or there's indicators based off of how this team plays and improves over the course of this season with this very new and very young group that Winger and Dawkins understand, like, yeah, this is the guy that can lead us where we want to go, or like, no, like, he's very nice and he knows some stuff, but he's better off in the second chair, not the first, and he can go have his second chair somewhere else. So, again, I think if I'm doing a hierarchy of needs, a hierarchy of problem with the old Zardos, it is distinctly a player personnel issue before it is a coaching issue. And because of the nature of what this season is, the coaching is not really about winning games. It's about giving guys opportunities to grow. And unlike the Commanders, and I think we have to separate them, the Commanders could make the playoffs this year. There is basically I was higher on the Wizards than almost anybody I knew. I thought they'd win maybe 35 games. Like, their ceiling is what they were last year. And if Jordan Poole was out of his mind good, which is clearly not, then I thought that maybe they could sniff the high 30s and mess around for a play-in spot. But, like, as someone who thought they would blow out their Vegas over-under of 24.5,
Chad Henne said you have a few superstitions.
I've still put their ceiling at like 35 games. This isn't a playoff team. They're not that good. I thought they'd be pluckier night to night, and last night they're plucky. Hey, if they can play like that the rest of the season, they're not going to be that bad in the fourth quarter. Be in games. Be competitive. Be in crunch time situations. Give guys like Denny Avdia and Bilal Coulibaly opportunities. Give Jordan Poole opportunities to get it right. And then trade him. And then get someone else who's on here more on Coulibaly's timeline and go win a championship with him as your second or third best player. And trade Kyle next summer. Not because I don't love Kyle, because he's going to be damn near 30 years old. And he could be a really useful piece for a contender. So take their draft capital for the future when you're going to be competitive and let him go win a ring somewhere. Or, frankly, like, I'm okay with Kyle staying and being a bit of a mentor and someone who can eat some possessions on a team so it's not all on Koulibaly and others. So, like, I think the difference in the Commanders and the Wizards is that the Commanders the Commanders actually aren't in a rebuild. The Commanders need to reshuffle the deck. Their coaching staff needs to get gone. Their front office needs to get gone. But because of where they are and the nature of the NFL, they can rebuild next year. They can make a playoff team that is a pain in the ass next year. They have the draft capital, and in certain positions in the league, like you can draft first and second rounders that make direct impact. You have free agent money to spend at other positions, and you might have a top 10 quarterback if Sam continues on the trend that he's on. And you've got Terry McLaurin, and hopefully Jahan in year 3 like wiggles out of whatever sophomore slump he's in. And, you know, some of these other guys can take steps that Forbes and Quan Martin can take steps in year 2. Like, there's a path next year. There is no freaking path there was one path for the Wizards to be competitive in the next 3 years. And they needed that final ping pong ball to be Victor Wembanyama's. That has come and gone. That final ping pong ball went to the Spurs, not the Wizards. And thus, we are going to be in a long rebuild for a while. But if we know that and we keep that perspective, it should inform how we analyze the team. They didn't have the potential upside that the Commanders had, which is why the way I look at Wes Unseld Jr. and the way I look at Ron Rivera are very, very different. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, real things, real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, we're still going to do real things. We're going to wrap up the show. We'll tell everybody what's coming up tomorrow, all those things. We didn't really have a chance today. We ran long on a couple of things to do our weekend in review, which I wanted to do specifically because we had an all-timer championship game this weekend. And I know that this sport is growing in popularity at numbers that are like mind-blowing, like 20% year over year type of growth in terms of viewership. And I am talking about women's soccer, a sport that I used to work in, a sport that I have a lot of friends in, including the general manager of the team that won the championship this weekend, which is kind of cool. But like in terms of like quality entertainment, one, there's local ties. It was Allie Krieger's last game, and she is from Virginia. And you also, the MVP of the game wound up being Midge Purse, who is from Silver Spring, both of whom have had successful careers with the U.S. Women's National Team. Midge is still younger and very well might be playing in the Olympics next year, if not the World Cup, a couple years down the road. She was probably one of the final cuts this year. She's awesome. She also went to Harvard and is like brilliant. So yeah, she's awesome. I'm also trying to grab her for the show later this week. So stay tuned. Maybe we will get to talk about this game a little bit more after all, if we can get Midge on the show. But like, Allie's a freaking legend. It's her versus, and Gotham is the team versus OL Reign and Megan Rapinoe, who needs no introduction. It's her last game as well. 3 minutes into the game, because life is cruel and like the darkest of humor seems to follow Rapinoe over the last 18 months, where she misses a penalty in the World Cup, something she never does. That's how her national team career ends. And then her club career ends with a torn Achilles in the 3rd minute. Yeah, you didn't see that?
No.
Yeah, she just went down, non-contact injury, absolutely brutal. Like, she knew it instantly. Absolutely sucks. So you have this like fairy tale ending of these two legends who were great friends and have played together for the U.S. forever that ends in one of them going down with an Achilles injury 3 minutes in. And then things got crazy. Gotham goes up. Midge has the assist on the first goal. A couple minutes later, OL Reign ties. Later in the game, like late second half, Gotham pulls ahead again 2-1 with Midge having the assist off of a corner kick. And then in the final minutes of the game, there's a ball that's played over the top. And we're talking like literally, I think we're in like the 95th minute or something like that at this point. So there's like 6 minutes of stoppage time. And by the time the ref blows the whistle to start it, like you're in the 6th minute because they had to sort out a giant mess that I'm about to describe. Gotham had already used all their substitutions, which will come important in a second. The keeper comes out on this ball that's hit over the top. Gotham has a player running in, and she kind of gets caught in between where she's right on the edge of the box, and she decides, I'm going to punch this ball away. The problem was her hands were over the line. Red card. Again, Gotham does not have any substitutes. So one of their midfielders, Neely Martin, has to throw on a goalkeeper jersey and Mandy Naughton's gloves, the keeper. So like, hey, here are my gloves. I'm going to go watch in the locker room now for the final 3 minutes of this game. I hope, because now Gotham has a free kick on the edge of the box against a midfielder in goal. Thankfully for Neely Martin, the wall worked. Free kick goes into the wall. Ultimately, Gotham wins. incredible theater, as good as sports can possibly be, on CBS on Saturday night. And congrats to Midge. Congrats to Ali Krieger. Congrats to my friend Yael Averbush West, who is the general manager and built that team. By the way, Gotham was the last place team in the league last year. They climbed all the way to the top and won the damn thing. Turned it around in a year. Yael, also former, not only U.S. Women's National Team player, but Washington Spirit player. Just an incredible story, as good as sports gets. And that's why I wanted to mention it as the weekend in review. And I probably left off like 3 or 4 other chaotic moments, because there is no league in the world in any sport that is as chaotic as the NWSL, and it is freaking glorious.
Wow, I need to go look at these highlights, Craig.
Yeah, you do.
You did a great job, I guess, depicting sort of kind of like everything that happened.
We were trying to think of like what's the analogy
That's
of like
insane.
a midfielder having to go into goal. And it's kind of like if all of a sudden like your emergency quarterback had to play in the final. Actually, I think the best thing, because it's more of a specialized position, is like, imagine you have a game-winning field goal, but on the previous kickoff, your kicker pulled their hamstring.
So what?
And your punter, if for some reason, is not available. Not that like all punters are good place kickers, but like you all of a sudden a field player, your quarterback, your tight end, your running back has to go kick a game-winning field goal.
That happened this season.
Yeah.
The Texans.
Yeah, but like it's for the championship.
Oh, now you're up in the stakes. Okay.
Right. And luckily for her, like she does have a layer of defense, which there's no analogy there. Like the wall, the free kick goes into the wall. And by the way, it was also the free kick was taken by Rose Lavelle, who might be the best in the world at it, or one of the 10 best. Like, it was so good. The Stars played, like, Rose scored in the game. She's one of the best players in the world. Midge is phenomenal. Like, the Stars played like stars. The game-winning goal is scored by Esther Gonzalez, who is from Spain and was on the World Cup team that won for Spain this summer. She came over after that and signed with Gotham and was with them the rest of the season and helps win the championship. Just literally as good as sports can be, from a drama, theater, stars being stars, chaos, everything you'd want out of something. And yes, a championship is on the line. That game was freaking phenomenal. And I can't believe you missed it. Sad. Sad for you, sir. Okay, as promised, with a minute left in the show.
Real things.
We're not going to be so this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays always great for Real Things, because a lot of the NFL film stuff comes out from the weekend. This is a great moment between DK Metcalf and Logan Thomas after Sunday's loss for the Commanders.
Yes, sir. You too, bro. I know it might not mean nothing, but my son, big fan. He's 15, built just like you, bro. Keep doing your thing, man. You can get this one now. Get this one too. Well, I ain't that.
That's awesome. DK is like, hey, man, take this jersey. Also, the thought that Logan Thomas is a 15-year-old that's built like DK Metcalf is terrifying.
It's insane.
All right, that's our show. We'll see you tomorrow. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Talking Terps now.